Hello, heretics. This is Lilith, and I'm here with Renee. We are Veritas Voices, and we're going to have to interrupt our promised scheduled programming. I do apologize. We will be covering the articles and other matters regarding guided Bible study next episode. This particular episode is because, as many of you know, my Twitter account was suspended permanently. And I'm appealing it. But I'm a bit depressed. I had 3,700 followers. I met so many friends. You wouldn't really think that Twitter was a place you would meet a lot of friends, but I mean, I met Renee there.
Yeah.
I've met friends in various parts of the world, friends I've spent hours talking to about all manner of things. Not just religion, just music and anything, just all kinds of stuff. Sending kitten GIFs or GIFs. GIFs. No, GIFs. It's GIFs. Yeah. I'm honestly pretty bummed out, which I'm sure no one's terribly shocked to hear. And so Renee suggested we should talk about this rather than not talk about it, and talk about Twitter and how it's been treating things and what the consequences of that have been, particularly for free thought and atheist communities, where we're talking about stuff that, even in the most respectful terms, does offend some people. As Daniel Dennett said, there's no polite way to tell someone that they've devoted their life to an illusion. Or a delusion, possibly it was. But either way, he's right. Not that I am always respectful. I am sometimes quite offensive. I try to wield that as a tool. It is a tool. So there are times to be polite and there are times to be rude. And when people are taking advantage of the vulnerable and abusing their power, that is the time to be very rude, in my opinion. So Renee, what's your take on all this?
Well, first of all, I do want to say that I'm very sorry that this happened to you. Yeah, I'm not pleased with it either, because they deplatformed my co-host. They deplatformed a very good friend of mine, and that sucks. But I do think that I speak for every one of our viewers as well as the atheist community on Twitter when I say that we will support you with this. But I think what's first of all important is for those who are listening and didn't see what was happening, don't actually know what really is going on, is that to sort of shed some light on what exactly happened and how it happened. And yeah.
Of course. The first thing that happened is that Jack Van Impe died. The whole reason I got on Twitter as more than just a person looking to chat, the whole reason I've become involved in atheist and anti-theist activism is not only because I object to the false claims of religion, which I do very strongly, but because I recognize that people who did not grow up in the evangelical culture don't get it. There are so many things they don't get. Reasonable people thinking, it's not possible that anyone actually believes that, right? And too often they act according to that. And if someone does believe it, they're like, well, they must be a lunatic because it's devoid of context. So what I've wanted to do is to try and provide the context. That's why I focused not on my deconversion, but my indoctrination. I want people to understand how someone can be brought to think a certain way. part of that, a huge part of maintaining that in evangelical Christianity, is a whole secondary culture with its own music, its own TV, its own movies. They are always at least 10 years out of date and very substandard. There have been a few good musicians who kind of broke out of contemporary Christianity, but it's a very hard thing to do. But in general, there is this bubble, which is like, we're just as good as the outside world. And from a purely artistic, analytical standpoint, they aren't. If you want any confirmation of that, go to Hannah and Jake and watch their responses to Christian movies. The face palming is epic. And we're not just talking old Christian movies, which they do sometimes cover. We're talking ones that came out like in the last 5 years. Just the most awful Hallmark straight to DVD, but just worse, just awful, awful, awful stuff.
Pretty much everything by our comfort, I think.
Yeah, the cringe. Just cringe is probably the best term. Yeah. Jack Van Impe was part of the televangelist, one of the few who survived the 80s and 90s and all of the, oh, look, they're all rapists and drug addicts and closet homosexual with, underage parishioners, blah, 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 and frauds. All those. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what to call it. It was just this constant stream of finding out that all these, renowned religious leaders were not, just terrible. They were terrible. It's kind of like Joel Osteen today. I keep wanting to make a bet with someone, get a running pool of bets on whether he will eventually fall to financial or sexual misconduct. I think financial, because he doesn't spend a lot of time ranting about sex, and that's a pretty good indicator.
Well, my question would be, what does he fall to first? What does he fall to in general? Because I think one doesn't exclude the other. But go on.
Fair enough. So anyway, Jack Van Impe has started his own ministry. He's one of those who's been stirring up fears around the apocalypse, and he's been doing this for decades. He had a show, Jack Van Impe Presents. There are many clips and things on YouTube, and it's incredibly cringy. He and his wife are both, older, but still wearing that sort of plastic televangelist demeanor, and episodes are very interesting. He's one of those who says that he knows more of the Bible than anyone else alive and has memorized Revelations, etc., and is always coming up with ways in which whatever is happening today fits with Bible prophecy, which can involve some very interesting reasoning. It's instructive to actually watch a little bit of that kind of thing just to know what's going on, because there are a lot of people who buy into it. I've known them. I've had them in my family. He would make predictions about the end of the world, never quite nailing a day, but saying, a year or a season in a year. And of course, it always passed, and he would pretend he never said it.
Sort of make general predictions which cannot be falsified in order to allow for...
Oh, they could be falsified, but he didn't ramp up as it approached. So he could kind of let it fade into whatever he was predicting today, which, again, it changes constantly. But he convinced many people that they were living in the end times, and he kept them convinced. A lot of the more ridiculous beliefs I held, I didn't snap out of so much as drift away from them until I could get some perspective from that cloying, manipulative terror and go, oh, okay, yeah, no, that's not reasonable or true or anything. he kept people in it. And he made money off of them. I don't even want to know how many books and booklets and tracts and videos about prophecy he sent to people in return for their, offerings and donations to his ministry, which just consisted of him selling people the apocalypse, the love of the apocalypse. He would be so glad every day about how they were in the end times. And isn't it just wonderful that God is so faithful to show us all these horrible things that are happening?
Yeah.
So he died. Not something I mourn. When a man dies with $12 million that he took from little old ladies, terrifying them and making them feel grateful for it, yeah, I kind of wish hell existed. So I said to his account in the announcement of his death precisely what Christopher Hitchens said upon the demise of the late Jerry Falwell. Give him an enema, you can bury him in a fucking matchbox. This is offensive. It's intended to be offensive. It's certainly offensive. But offensive is not against the rules of Twitter or of free speech. I was suspended for targeted harassment and or threats or wishes of violence and harm.
Wow.
Which I don't understand, because one can not effectively threaten or harm a dead man.
Yeah.
He's quite beyond any ill I could wish upon him. And as I did point out in one of my emails to Twitter with further information, I didn't even, wish hell and damnation on him, which I have had wished on me by many a fine, upstanding Christian, as I'm sure many of us have.
Yeah, I get them daily.
Isn't it lovely?
Yeah.
But apparently wishing eternal torture on someone is not wishing harm on them, but suggesting an efficient way to bury a man who's already dead, wishing harm. Yeah. I don't see it.
Yeah, it's completely ridiculous. But that is also, I think, a big problem with Twitter in general, is that they use bots in order to suspend people. And I think any person with a thinking brain, any person in general, can recognize that you didn't threaten anyone, because there wasn't a person that could be threatened because he is dead.
Yes. And it was a suggestion, too. I mean, enemas are not pleasant, but they're not exactly.
Yeah.
People get them.
Yeah. To be honest,
when they're alive.
To be honest, it was also, I think, a quote from Christopher Hitchens. So
it was, and I should have identified it as such. I didn't, and that was my mistake and judgment error. But I understand why Twitter uses bots. They kind of have to, because of the sheer number of things they are monitoring, and they take a lot of reports in. I've sent in lots of reports from accounts that seem to be just spamming Trumpishness and said, I think this might be a bot or a paid Russian account. I don't know. Could be fake. Maybe just, send a ping or get a sign in or something. Check, basically. But yeah, I kind of think Christopher Hitchens, as a friend of mine told me, Christopher Hitchens might have been suspended if he were on Twitter today. But I also know he would not have given one single solitary fuck. But I kind of can't afford that. I don't have a, published career as a journalist. I don't have a book out yet. Certainly not one that's on, the top of the charts for scaring the pants out of Christians. But But I do have friends,
Yeah.
a lot of friends that have been there for me and that I really appreciate. And I've made friends on the other side too that I talk to about religious things. Sometimes they duck out on me, like with the tire prophecy that a friend of mine and I were gonna check over. Um, but they're still there. A man we were talking to, Renee, you and I,
Yeah. We
responded
met on
to,
Twitter.
yeah, on Twitter. We were
Yeah. Oh, you
responding
mean
to, we were responding to an offensive, well, I had tweeted something offensive but true, again, and not specifically targeting anyone. Um, and this Christian came in, first of all, with how dare you? This is ridiculous. I'm going to declare verbal war on you. And by the end of the time we started talking, he was saying that Renee and I were now his favorite atheists on Twitter, which for a Christian is a bit like having a favorite toothache. Van Tillian, I hope he doesn't mind me calling out his handle. I'm just assuming the him. I don't really know. Um, and now he's posted asking for me to be reinstated because I add value to the Twitter community. And that's amazing that people can connect and, yeah, yell at each other, but also take the dialogue through to a point of at least being able to communicate their ideas.
yeah.
That takes work on their part, but it's also an amazing thing that we have the platform to do that.
Yeah.
And I know people abuse the system to get rid of people like myself when we upset their balance. And I mean, it's happened to many before. Skeptic Nikki didn't deserve it. One person went to Twitter jail. I'm just trying to remember. I've received so much support, and I can't thank you guys enough. But hearing some of the things that people got suspended for was just sometimes it's
Yeah.
absolutely impossible. You're
One
going,
thing.
I can't.
One thing I do want to say concerning this topic, and I do think that you'll agree with me on this. The reason why I am on Twitter is for two reasons. One reason is to promote reason and to promote my views concerning religion, concerning topics which tie into religion, but also my other reason is my friends like you, friends like Nikki, friends like just
Yeah.
people out there. And it seems like Twitter's on its path to allowing me of not allowing you or not allowing me to fulfill either of those goals. And
It's
well, yeah,
sorry, go ahead.
and while I do think that while I am not gonna leave Twitter because I still have my friends, and even though they obviously want to censor people, I will stay on there for my people. And I think I can also safely assume that you will be back with a new account as well. But yeah, it's just not what it
Yeah.
used to be anymore.
And but that's against their policy too. If I should try and circumvent by getting a new account. Not that I'm going to leave Twitter. Obviously, I will reach out to friends and continue to fight on this platform, but I clearly need to diversify for one thing. But another thing is, oh, there's so many other things. I know last year a lot of people talked about and were quite upset about including religions in protected groups. And I was not thrilled to hear that either, because too often the concept of blasphemy has been used to, avoid criticism and avoid having to answer criticism, to protect bad ideas with worse ideas. So I did go to Twitter support and look it up. Now, the policy as presented is to include language that dehumanizes on the basis of religion. Now, dehumanizing, I can understand. There were several examples given with, relevant bits blurred out. We need to exterminate the rats. They're viruses. They're making our country sick. This group should be punished. We're not doing enough to rid ourselves of those filthy animals. That's really dehumanizing language and could reasonably be seen as inciting violence, and the type of hatred that would lead to violence. I don't actually object to rules against dehumanizing people. But it's difficult at the same time because, as you said, they do use bots and they kind of have to for volume's sake, if nothing else.
Yeah.
But that leaves way too many opportunities for people to abuse the system. And one of the things that neither YouTube nor Twitter have been very good at is actually kicking back people that abuse the system. People who repeatedly report things that do not deserve to be reported. And knowing that they're not using the terms correctly. That kind of behavior, deliberately starting campaigns to take someone out, that kind of thing, that should also be against the rules. And I haven't seen much in terms of sort of allowing us to report abuse of the system, if you will.
Yeah.
In that sense. Like, this person is trying to get people they don't like banned. Yeah. Then maybe that kind of thing, maybe a person could look into the history and kind of go, okay, that's unjust. They're reporting people who made threats against them. Or, yeah, they seem to have a lot of reports that don't actually fall within the scope of the terms, and that, maybe they need to be made aware that that's abusing the system.
Yeah. I mean, one thing which I'm going to say is, if I, for instance, see another Elona Henzo account, like what feels like maybe the 10 millionth one I've lost count, then I will point out that Helena Henzo's back. I will look for a tweet where it's homophobic, and then people will report him. But I don't think it's fair.
Yeah, but do you have to wait even 5 minutes for him to come in with the dehumanizing language? This is one individual who's been banned countless times, who's clearly mentally ill. Honestly, even if he's just trolling at this point, he's clearly mentally ill. So,
yeah. But I think Twitter's moving into a really bad direction, and this is sort of a little bit getting away from the topic. But one thing which Twitter's planning to do is they want to, in the future, allow people to send out tweets and to predetermine that only, for instance, your followers, or maybe no person at all, can reply to your tweet. So, for instance, if a Christian were to make the cosmological argument on his timeline, and he could make sure that that no person can even in principle reply to his tweet. So then maybe other people come along and think, well, this is a sound argument, nobody has debunked it, and that can be harmful.
If that's the case, yes. I've seen a beta version of this in action. I even used it to test it. It wasn't the way you describe it. The way that it was, and I saw Mr. Atheist using a beta version of it too, where you could tweet and anyone could reply, but you could hide certain replies.
Yes.
So at the bottom where maybe, they have the see additional replies, including those that contain offensive content, and all the profane replies are below. Then you would also see, click here to see the replies that have been hidden by the original poster. Yeah, so they could sort of diminish the probability of those being seen, but not prevent people who were actually looking for them to see them, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And that is something that I'm against as well. But
yeah, although that's far less sweeping power. I don't want to destroy the possibility for dialogue on Twitter, but at the same time, also some things are more personal than others, and I can recognize that different people use Twitter in different ways. The problem is not so much the intended use, but the ways in which
it can be abused.
Yeah, exactly. If someone wants to make an announcement that their grandma died or something, usually they'll just receive a ton of support below. But if someone says something hateful, I can understand why they'd want to hide that. I don't know. It's a balance between, how public is the forum and how private can you make certain aspects of it, because the forum itself broadly is public, of course, but individuals may want to interact more privately. That's what DMs are for, granted, but yeah, they seem to be looking to find a potential middle ground or a little more control for harassment that doesn't quite fall outside of what's permissible.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm honestly really bummed out about this.
Yeah. Is there anything more that we would need to address?
As I said, I am trying to get my account reinstated. I don't know if that's going to work. Yeah. They asked for additional information, and I sent in, they didn't actually ask for any specific additional information, so I did ask for clarification, but I also sent in, whatever I had to hand that I could, hey, if you want, there's this, and this you can consider. I'm waiting to hear back from them. If you are willing to send out a tweet, that would be great. I'm also going to put the email for Twitter support down below. I'm just going to ask that, ironic as it is, that you use respectful language, just because, however frustrating this is, and it's totally very frustrating. No one knows better than me. I don't think swearing at them is actually going to be helpful. However appealing it may be, that's not likely to help. And I know that I do have a lot of friends who'd be willing to help and who'd be willing to help me rebuild, but I'd honestly rather not have to rebuild. And if people are willing to send a message or send out a tweet, I would be incredibly grateful. Yeah. So I will include the information down below. Maybe some suggested phrasing. It's just an idea. You don't have to use it, obviously. I know some people are like, I don't know how to compose a complaint. So I'll try and include that. If you want to use it, don't feel in any way obligated. It's just, if you're having one of those days where the words are not doing the things and stuff, then I've had those days. So I'll try and help. But
one final thing which I do want to say is that, first of all, if I did believe in prayer, then I would pray that you will get your account back. But also, for our viewers out there, if you want to continue to follow Lilith and to get updates on her account, then you should know that currently she is using our Veritas account, Veritas Voices. The link will be in the description, and from there she will deliver updates for you. And we will also include my Twitter handle in the description. Her and I are pretty good friends, and chances are that if there is anything new that will come up, then I will learn about it, and then you can also find additional information concerning her situation and how things are going on my account as well. And I will try my best to help you, and we will try our best to get you reinstated or to build you back up again, or to share information with people who are interested in the information. But yeah.
Thank you. And I do the people, just reaching out and support. It's been wonderful. So I can't tell you how much it means to me. It's amazing. You guys are amazing, and don't feel obligated to do anything you're not comfortable with. I'm looking for ways to make this better. I know there are people who want to help, and I want to make that easier, but please don't feel any pressure to involve yourself, especially in any way you're uncomfortable with. I don't, this is my fight. And for friends who are willing to help, I'm eternally grateful. For people who are a bit uncomfortable being stuck in the middle, I totally get it. And don't feel any need to, to worry about that. I get it. And I'm not going to, be upset or hurt by any of that. So I don't. This is a bummer. It's really, yeah. This is dreadful.
Yeah. Anyways, that was today's topic, and if you want to help her, you will see below how you can help her. And next week will hopefully be a more fun topic. Next week we will air the episode that we planned for this week, and after that we will get to some crazy Christian tweets again, so you can look forward to that.
Oh, that'll be fun. And viewer submissions are always encouraged for that, because, we all have to suffer through the cringe together. Solidarity, brothers and sisters.
Yeah.
In any event, I hope you all have a good week, and reason bless.